Good morning, everyone. I believe we are all doing well. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you
Sure.
very much. So today we are going to continue with our discussion on the research process. And ideally, during the second session of the research process, I tend to carry out the exercise and then discuss the findings right here. But because the last time we couldn't, complete the research process, we are going to continue from where we got to, and hopefully we'll have time to have that particular exercise today. Now, before we continue with where we got to, let me just briefly go back what we discussed, spoken so far up to. So we started talking about the research process that was last week in our last session, which we said the process comprises a series of steps or stages that we go through when planning and conducting our research. And here in our class, we made mention of 10 stages or 10 steps, and we said in certain books, when you read, you find either 8 or 9 steps. And whichever way that or whichever, irrespective of how these steps have been listed, they all talk about the same concepts. Some of these have aggregated or combined some steps into one. That is how come you may have either 8 or 9 steps, while we are talking about 10 stages in here. So with the stages, we are talking about the statement of problem, which was the first stage where you try to identify the problem and then give the justification as to why you are conducting that particular study. The second stage, which is the development of the research question. So the problem that exists in there can be created into a question or a hypothesis. And usually we say we use a hypothesis when we want to compare cause and effect or want to see if two variables are related. Other than that, in the scenario where our research is mostly descriptive, where we are only trying to describe the situation, we don't necessarily need a hypothesis. All that we need is questions that are related to that particular problem. And then the next stage is about searching literature. You search and you evaluate existing studies that have already been carried out in that particular area. Or this helps or this guides you to streamline your work. You can also get to information about the methodology, the approaches, and so on and so forth that have been used in previous studies. The review of literature allows you to also identify the gaps that exist so that you can be able to streamline your work much more efficiently. Then you look at what the type of approach and method that you are going to use in your study. So the approach is more like that, what the overall plan that you want to carry your work. How do you want to gather your data? And in the approaches, we've already talked about 3 main approaches: the quantitative approach, the qualitative approach, and the mixed method approach. So if your research is going to deal with numbers, that is where you make use of the quantitative approach. If your research is about trying to get or understand the experiences of your subjects, then the qualitative approach is going to be ideal. And then in the context where you want to have, a better or a clearer picture, a mix of both, the numbers and the perception, then that is where you might need the mixed method approach. And then when we take the research methods in particular, this is talking about the sort of tools and techniques that we are going to use in gathering the data. And each of these approaches have what their own tools or technique that we use. And we said that if your Steady is going to be the quantitative. In most cases, what you will have either an interview or a focus group discussion. So to try to understand the perspective of the subject. If it is something that deals with numbers, then you could what measure or use the structured questionnaires. Okay. So, all right. Olu say, I'll try as much as possible to increase. Is it better now? Olu say, is the voice better now? And
Yes, sir.
Vera, please turn your video feed off. Vera, what? Please turn your video feed off. All right. So, if it is the quantitative. Okay, so Bernard is also saying my voice is low. Is my voice low or Bernard's phone is not on loudspeaker? Is my voice low?
Yes,
Then
please.
my voice is still low. Okay, many are
Yes,
saying,
please.
okay, so if please check your your speakers. Probably your phones are not on loudspeaker. Because my
I
voice
think
is
it's
quite
my
clear. Many
best.
are saying
It's
my
okay,
voice is.
sir.
Andrews, come again.
Sir, good morning. It means you're very far.
No, I'm not far. I'm just by my laptop.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, many are saying it's
So
better now.
your voice is okay now.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. So for those who can hardly hear me, please check your what do you call it? Your phone speaker. Probably it's not on loudspeaker. That's why you can hardly hear me. So with the method, if it is quantitative, you can either measure or observe or use the structured questionnaire to assess the particular variables of interest. Now, we also look at gaining access to the research site or getting ethical consideration. So it is quite essential to have ethical clearance in any sort of research that we conduct. So before getting that ethical clearance, there are some committees or boards that give those sort of clearance. But first, they will have to get your proposal or your work, the work that you intend conducting, and they'll go through and see if that study is feasible and if it causes little to no harm to your subject before that ethical clearance is given out to you. And we say that in almost every single study that involves human subjects, you must get ethical clearance before you proceed with your data study. But if the study does not involve human subject, there are times when you cannot proceed with your data collection without ethical clearance. That is if you are using animal models or plants. But in the animal models and the plants, if you are going to perform some procedures on an animal, then you must be granted ethical clearance before you proceed with your research work. And if the plant is an endangered species, then making use of this animal requires that you are to get ethical clearance. However, if that plant is not an endangered species, and all that we are going to do is just to observe the plant, then there's no need for you to get an ethical clearance. And Rhoda, please check either your network or your phone speaker. Please, those who can hardly hear me, Rhoda, kindly check your phone's speaker. Check and see if it's on loudspeaker. If not, you can use an earpiece or earpod. All right. So the next stage is about sampling. That is where we got to. So we said that in research, there are two main. Okay, all right, Rhoda, that's okay. I'm glad it is okay now. So in the sampling, we said there are two main forms of sampling. So in research, it's simply when we talk about the sampling, it is the process of selecting a smaller or a small group of people, items or observation from a larger population. So you can study them and draw conclusions about the whole group. So in quantitative research, in a number of cases, the population of interest may be too large for us to gather data from every single individual. So this is where we may have to use the sample representation. Now, so instead of using the entire population, we choose a sample that represents that particular population. And when we talk about population, that is what the entire group that we are interested in. And when we are sampling, we do talk about two main types of sampling. We have the probability sampling and the non-probability sampling. So in the probability sampling, every member of the population has an equal chance of being selected. And this tends to reduce bias and also tends to support the generalization of our results. And within the probability sampling, we made mention of four main types of sampling: the simple random sampling, the systematic sampling, the stratified sampling, and the cluster sampling. And briefly, the simple random sampling is where you identify or you choose samples by using random allocation. So here you may probably write every single individual in the population, either their names or you have a certain identity that you give to them, probably let's say 1 to the last person. And then you can use a computer to generate randomly the number of people that you want to take part in the study. You randomly select them, or you can use the lottery approach, or that is, you can put all their names or the number that are assigned to them in something that is opaque. Then you will blindly select one after the other. Yes, the slide is not moving because I'm still recapping what we've discussed so far. So as I said earlier on, in my second session about the research process, I usually give exercise so that it can test our understanding. If you have other, concerns, we could address them. But because last time we couldn't finish with the research process, that's why we are now going to try and finish the process before we go ahead with the exercise. So far, we discussed all the way to sampling. So I was only recapping the process from the first process all the way to the sampling. And then we'll continue on from sampling to the dissemination of the results. So don't worry about the slide. Yes, the slide is at the moment not moving. All right. So with the simple random sampling, an easy way to perform that and a practical way is you probably give identity or a number to each person within the population. Then this that have been written on a paper can be kept in a box or a hat. Then you blindly select them one after the other. So if you need, let's say, 200 people out of, or 200 samples out of, let's say, 20,000, you don't dip your hand in the box and pick several at a time. No. Instead, you pick them one after the other until you get 200 people. Then when you do that, that means you perform what we call a simple random sampling. Then when we take the systematic sampling, what you need is a random starting point. Where are you going to start selecting the subject? So you've probably already, numbered your subject from, let's say, 1 to 2,000. Now, before you select the subject randomly, first you must know the interval that you're going to select at. And the interval is determined by you dividing the sample, by you dividing the total population by the number of sample size that you want. So if you want 200 samples out of 2,000, then your interval is determined by dividing 2,000 by 200. And what you get will be your interval. Now, you can use a computer to generate any random starting point, or those numbers that are already in the hat. You can just pick one number from that. So assuming that you pick, let's say, number 17. And if when we calculated the sample size, or sorry, when you calculated the desired weight that you want to use, the interval at which you want to use from the 2,000 by 200, and you had 10. So that means at every 10th interval, you will be choosing the 10 terms. So if the first random number that was selected was 17, then your next subject is going to be what? 27, 37, and so on and so forth until you get to the 200th selected participant. Now we take the stratified sampling. Here, the population is, grouped into what we call stratas. So when you take a strata, each individual within that group or in that strata has the same characteristics with each other. So maybe you can group them into, let's say, 5 strata: strata 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So every individual in strata 1 has the same characteristics. Maybe they are all males. You go to strata B, probably they are all females. Strata C or strata 3, they are all, let's say, employed. Strata D or F, they are all unemployed. So in each group, they all have what the same characteristics. And then you would randomly select individual from each strata to be part of your study. Now, when you take the cluster sampling, in cluster sampling, again, you group your participant, your study population. But in this grouping, group 1 is identical to group 3. It's either one or become part of say what every individual in the group, they don't have what an equal chance of being selected. And this tend to what lead to what bias in selection. When we take the, is my network still breaking? Okay. Okay, then just let me switch to my personal network. I'm using the schools. Just give me a minute, let me switch to my personal network. All right, is the network much better now? Because I've now switched to my own personal network. So the rest, maybe you can unmute and then tell me if it's much better or not.
Yeah, it's okay, sir. It's okay.
Yeah, please, it's better.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so there was a question in the comment section before it went up. So I think the person was, let me go back to that question. Okay, so I think it says I should go over the cluster sampling. Okay. All right, so I said in this particular method, the population is divided into groups, which we call clusters. And each individual in the clusters, when we take one cluster, let's say we have cluster A, cluster B, cluster C. Now, when we take a hypothetical example like the CODeL students, we can have Kumasi as one cluster, Keta as another cluster, Takwada as another cluster. Now, when we take each of these clusters, the individuals in one cluster are identical to the individuals in the other cluster. When we take the stratified sampling, when we group them into groups or the stratas, individuals in strata A are not identical to individuals in strata B. So if strata A has, strata B will have females. Strata C probably might have a different gender. If you have a different, you have a different gender. So the individuals in each group are not identical to that. other group. But when we take in the other cluster, so when we take Keta, for example, Keta have level 200, level 300 CODeL students and level 400 CODeL students. Same applies to TAPAD. TAPAD also has level 3 and level 400 CODeL students. Tamale has level 3 and 400 CODeL students. And each of these clusters or centers also have males and females. And all these centers also have those who are working, those who are not working. So the clusters here, each cluster is identical to each cluster, and whichever cluster that you choose is identical to the entire population. That's what the cluster sampling is about. Now, after you've grouped them, you will just randomly select a cluster to be part of your study. So in the context where the clusters are having a lot of people and you don't need more than one cluster individuals for your study, then you randomly select only one cluster. But if assuming that in each cluster we have about, let's say, 50 students in general and we want 200, then we'll have to randomly select 4 clusters to be able to meet the 200. But in the context where maybe one cluster will probably even have 200 or more, then randomly we select only one cluster to be part of our study. That's what the cluster sampling is about. Now, when we proceed with the non-probability sampling, here we said all individuals in the group do not have an equal chance of being selected. And the common types of the non-probability sampling, we have the convenience sampling, where you, the researcher, you select subjects who are easily approachable or easily accessible. And then we have the purposive sampling. So in the purposive sampling, the researcher knows that these individuals who he or she is going to select, they are able to contribute meaningfully to the research. So for example, maybe you are conducting a research on trying to identify reasons why mothers tend to skip antenatal care. Now, a researcher in this context will have to go in for the purposive sampling, probably trying to identify mothers who skip antenatal care and get to understand why they skip antenatal care. So in the research perspective, we mostly use the purposive sampling when we're conducting a qualitative study, where we don't really rely on numbers, but instead in-depth perspective or experience from an individual. They also have the snowball sampling, where as a researcher, what you do is this is usually based on individuals that are quite hard to reach. So in the snowball sampling, when you find 1 or 2 individuals who fit the inclusion or exclusion criteria and agree to be part of your study, then you can use these individuals to help you to get others to be part of your study. That's how the snowball sampling is about. And then we'll talk about the quota sampling. Here, the population is divided also into groups, and the researcher decides on how many people to take from each group. But the selection is not done random. And here, sometimes when you divide them into groups, there are some groups that will probably have more subjects than the other. So we select the participant based on the quota. If one group has, let's say, 150 subjects in it, and the other has, let's say, 70 subjects, if we want 200, we are not going to, sample 100 from each. No, but instead, we'll look at the percentage contribution that the 150 group will make to the 100, and then also look at the percentage contribution that the 70 will make. So in a nutshell, we're going to have smaller number in terms of counting numbers. We are going to have smaller numbers from the 70 compared to 150. So based on the proportion of individual in there, we are going to select non-random participants from those groups to be part of your study. So that was where our discussion actually got to. And I'm still seeing some, okay, so now people are saying it's much better. All right, thank you very much. Okay, so Roxanne is asking, is there types of cluster? Okay, so when you're performing just the cluster sampling, when we're talking about cluster sampling, it's just about when you put your population into groups, and here we talk about clusters. And as I said, each cluster is identical to the other. Now, there are certain contexts where we don't use the entire cluster. That is where a subsection or a sub definition of cluster sampling comes in, which we call the multi-stage cluster sampling. So in the multi-stage cluster sampling, after you've already grouped your population into clusters, then now within the cluster that you've got randomly selected, you will then also want to randomly select individuals from those classes that you've already previously randomly selected. So in the normal cluster sampling, if I group the CODeL students into centers, Kumasi, Keta, Tamale, and what you call this, Koforidua, and Akimoda. Now, each of these centers represent a cluster. So, because they have they are identical to each group. In the normal cluster sampling, we will randomly select one or more of these clusters, and every individual in that center will be part of the study. Now, when we want to get even, when the population is even much bigger, as I said, maybe you want 200, and here you have more than 200 in each of these clusters. So you can have another stage of cluster sampling called the multi-stage cluster sampling. So in the multi-stage cluster sampling, after, let's say, we have identified or we have randomly selected, let's say, Koforidua Center as our cluster. Now, within Koforidua Center, we then apply any of the random sampling technique to select a participant, any of the other probability sampling technique, either the random sampling or the systematic sampling to select subjects from that particular cluster. So that's the one that we call the multi-stage cluster sampling. Is that clear for you, Roxanne? Roxanne Jenfi. All right, thank you. Thank you too. All right, so now we are going to continue from here. So once the researcher has decided who to include, they have to approach the potential participant based on predetermined inclusion and exclusion criteria. So as part of our research, we set inclusion and exclusion criteria. Who do we want to include in our study? So we only include you if you meet the inclusion criteria, and we don't add it to the study if you don't meet the inclusion criteria. So for instance, in our previous example, where we're looking at breakfast consumption, its effect on academic performance. Here, the inclusion might be limited to maybe, let's say, full-time nursing students. And here we can exclude either the CODeL student or even among the full-time students, we can exclude those who have medical conditions that might probably affect either their appetite or academic performance. So you will set some of these inclusion and exclusion criteria, and mostly it's it should be justified why you are excluding certain group of people from the study. Also, the size of the sample also depends on the research method. It's quite important to also look at the sample size. Quantitative studies usually require larger samples so that statistical results can be generalized. While when we use quantitative research, it does not aim to generalize, so even the smaller samples are acceptable. Now, to give much more details about the sample size. So assuming that we want to conduct a study, so the sample size needs to be large enough to detect real effect if it is quantitative. And at the same time, should be small enough to remain feasible. We don't really need too much, samples in our study. And whichever sample size that we select for, or that we decide to use for our study, we need to be able to scientifically justify the sample size. Now, I've come across a number of studies by students where if they bring their sample size, some can just state that, okay, in our study, we will use a total. Okay, let me quickly read what is in the comment section. Paul Thatcher is saying, please, could be a case Okay, if I don't, let me see. Please code. Okay, so I think what Paul is asking is, could there be a case that you state that you are using a stratified sampling, and then later on you find out that the stratified sampling is not going to be effective or it's not going to be much useful, so you want to change? Yes, it's just in the early stage of your research, when if it's a proposal where you propose that I'm going to use this particular sampling technique, and probably during the conduct of the study, you find that, okay, you are finding it quite difficult to get the subject or the sample to be part of your study. And for that matter, or maybe due to one or two reasons, you decide to change your sampling technique. Yes, you can do that. But when you do that in your final report, you don't go back to change your proposal because you've already written it. But in your final report, you need to what? Clarify that you use a different sampling technique to get your samples to be part of your study. Emmanuel Chumesi is asking, please, your doesn't move. What is your, is it your slide? Yes, I have not moved the slide till now. Don't worry, I'll move it. I'm still explaining the sampling. All right, so okay, Idris is okay, sorry, yeah. So if we are trying to get our samples, so as I was explaining, there are some times where you read a student's proposal. Maybe the student says in the study they are going to use, let's say, 3,000 or 300 sample for the study. Then I read another proposal where I see that their sample is probably, let's say, 150. Now, somebody who doesn't really understand research might think that a 300 is more appropriate than 150. But it will depend on how these two are presented. What I'm trying to say here is that those who tend to just put any sample size without justifying it, you will most likely have problem along the way when you are presenting your findings, compared to somebody who justified how and why he or she is using a different sample size, even probably smaller than your sample size. Maybe the one who used the 150 justified how they came about with 150. But the one who is using the larger sample size of 300 did not justify how they came about with this particular sample size. Now, when we are determining the sample size, there are some core elements that drive the quantitative sample size determination. That is the quantitative aspect. This includes the level of significance, which we learned from statistics, the power of the study, that is the probability of detecting a true effect, the effect size, and the variability in terms of the standard deviation or the variance or the proportion in the study. Now, there are a number of sample size determination formula that exists. And one of the most commonly used one is the Cochrane formula. The Cochrane formula is one of the most commonly used statistical formula for determining sample size. We also do have the Yamani formula, which is also quite used in research. But the Cochrane formula is mostly used, especially when it comes to the medical and health-related fields. And we also do have different formulas, but some of these are not much more, appropriate for use. And in calculating the sample size, there are some statistical softwares that can help us to, derive our sample size, such as maybe like they call GPower as a statistical software. We have EpiInfo, which is you can download it freely. We have OpenEpi, Stata, and SPSS. All these can be used to determine a sample size. And another way to also determine a sample size in the quantitative approach is probably to use previously reported studies. Now, sometimes we can come across a study where they have identical characteristics to our own study. For example, we want to look at the impact of, let's say, carbohydrate consumption on diabetes and so on and so forth. Now, when we come across a study where it was conducted in similar direction. That is, they also tried to look at the effect of carbohydrate consumption on diabetes. Assuming that they use the same or similar study design as ours, and their population characteristics are also comparable to ours in terms of the gender, the age, and so on and so forth. And since either the hemoglobin, the HbA1c, or the blood lipid profile, and so on and so forth, if you're having the same outcome, then whichever sample size that they use, if they use a good formula like the Cochrane formula or the Yamani formula in determining their sample size, now that we've seen that our population has identical characteristics, our outcome that we want to state is also identical to theirs, we can go ahead by using their sample size, reference that in our state that, okay, in our study, we are using this sample size, which is in line with the study that was conducted by so and so. So this means that we justify how and why we are using our sample or that particular sample size. But in the context, when we just decide to just state a number, this is not acceptable in research. You need to justify the sample size. Now, in the quantitative, as I said, because we are talking about generalization, we need a larger sample size. But in the qualitative study, our interest is not about generalization, but rather about in-depth perspective. So here, a small number can use for the study. Now, in a lot of studies, when you go, we don't really go beyond 30 sample when we are doing the qualitative approach. The main reason here is when you reach saturation, you can stop with your data collection in the qualitative approach. Sometimes you can get something like either 5, 10, 7, 8, 9, 18 people in the qualitative. So in that aspect, though I'll talk more about it when I'm talking about the data analysis. When you are doing the qualitative study, each survey that you take data from, you analyze it as you take the data. So when you get to what we call saturation, that is, you don't really get any new pattern. The machine is currently not responding. Ah. All right. So I believe, or I'm happy that now people will not be complaining about the slide not moving, since we have now moved to the next, slide. Okay, so with the sample that has already been selected, now the researcher moves to data collection. The technique that we use in collecting data must suit the approach that we've already selected. Now, when we take our previous example on the breakfast study, if we are going to go with the quantitative data approach, then data might be collected through a structured questioning. So you ask questions about the meal habits of the student. We also get questions or data about the academic performance. Now, if it is a qualitative approach, then we might go in for the focus group discussion. We can hold a focus group discussion and then discuss probably how skipping breakfast affects their attention in the class. So this stage provides raw information that will later be analyzed in the research. So when we are gathering data in quantitative, we can have the interviewer administered questioning. So here, the researcher, him or herself, asks those questions to the subject to get to know the information or their responses in the quantitative aspect. At the same time, we can have what they call a self-administered questionnaire. So in the self-administered questionnaire, the researcher now can give the questionnaire out to potential subject to fill and return the questionnaire. This is not the case in the qualitative study. In the qualitative study, the researcher only use the interviewer administered questionnaire or the interviewer guide. So use the interviewer guide to help you to ask the necessary questions to get the responses. You cannot give your interview guide to a subject in their qualitative nature to tell the person, okay, go and fill the interview guide and then return it to me, or go and make a recording based on the interview guide and then return the recording for me to transcribe it. No. In qualitative approach, when we are collecting data, the researcher, him or herself, or whoever that the researcher has probably trained in data collection, must perform the data collection directly. But in the quantitative nature, you can either perform the data collection directly yourself or with a trained personnel, or you can give the questionnaire out for people to fill and then return it. And when I'm teaching this, I usually like to have it much more practical. Now, if we are collecting data, especially in the quantitative approach, which I believe that many of you will be using the quantitative design or the quantitative approach over the qualitative approach. Now, if we are using the quantitative approach, it's either we develop, after we have the questionnaire, it's either we print the questionnaire out and fill it or give it to the participant to fill, or we can use the online-based questionnaire. Whichever one that we use, it has its own strengths and limitation. And last year, I guided this, your colleagues, those in the August batch, to look at this different perspective. Now, if you make use of the paper-based questionnaire, then in most cases, the data that you collect, the errors that come in there are usually less because you tend to see what information that the participant have filled. And if there are certain information that are not well filled or that we think there are some errors in filling the questionnaire, you can promptly, create the indulgence of the subjects and then ask or clarify the concept quickly. Now, the challenge here is that when you use the paper-based questioning, sometimes moving up and down with questioning on the phone can be very daunting, especially if you are doing a research where one questionnaire might probably have about 5, 10, or 15 pages to be filled. And imagine that you have about 150 or even 200 participants or samples to be, to be used for data collection. That means you have to carry a whole bag on your shoulder going up and down to gather the data. So this will make your work a little bit much more difficult. And now, even in the context where you are able to go through this struggle of getting the data, you now also have to sit down and look at the questionnaires and then type the data that you have in a certain software like Excel or XP or something of that sort. Now you also have to spend time in typing them. Now, to make this much easier, you can go in with the online-based questioning. When we go in for the online-based questioning, here you create your questionnaire using some of these online platforms like either SurveyMonkey, Google Forms, and so on and so forth. I actually really prefer Google Docs because it's quite free. It allows for a number of variables, and you can also allow several subjects to fill the questionnaire. But the other platforms, they are either not free or the free ones too will not allow you to use several variables or several samples in the filling of the form. Now, when we use the online form, it makes our work a little bit much more easier because you don't have to carry any paper questionnaire along with you to the field. You can either send the link to your subject to fill, or you can just fill the questionnaire directly, but online. So when you meet the subject, after the subject has passed the inclusion and exclusion criteria, you then administer the questions and then you answer them directly online. Now, the good thing is that aside you not carrying questionnaire, when you are done gathering the data, you can just go to the settings and then download all the data that you've gathered. Once you download them, you don't have to type in data again. The difficulty here lies with when you give your the questionnaire out, just like the paper-based questionnaire. In the online version, if you send the link out for the self-administered questionnaire, sometimes some people may not really understand certain questions, and some may leave it blank, or they will just answer it based on what they understand. Probably that is not the meaning of the question. And if you had had a chance to explain the question for them, they would have been able to give better answers. And now we live in an era where sometimes when you give even research-based questionnaires, where you are expecting, real responses from your subjects, some might go into use AI to answer the questions for them. So sometimes you may not have the true depiction of the real response from the subject. That is one of the challenges that are associated with giving the online-based questionnaires. Other than that, using the online questionnaire is much more efficient compared to the paper-based questionnaire. So this online-based questionnaire, you cannot give it out to your subjects if it's qualitative. If it's qualitative, you may create your own online interview guide. You ask the question directly to the subject yourself, or during a focus group discussion, you ask or you discuss on this particular concept, and you personally gather your own information before you proceed. All right, let me quickly go back to the comment section. I think there are some questions. So Peter Akable is asking, please, I want to know the difference between developing research question and data collection. All right, so when we take the question, this is the tool that you use in the data collection. The data collection is the process of gathering the data or the information from the subjects. And I'm also glad that Peter asked this question. Now, aside we clarifying the difference between the tool, which is the questionnaire or the question that we are using, and then the process of gathering the information. Now, in research, and this is something that happens quite often, when we take research, there are many instances where people tend to create their own questionnaire, just like the way Peter is asking the question, developing research question. Now, I don't advise students, especially at undergraduate level, to develop their own questionnaire, unless if they are adapting a questionnaire. There's a difference between you completely developing a questionnaire and you adapting. When you are developing your questionnaire, that means you are creating everything from scratch. Yes, you can do that, but when you do that, listen to what you are supposed to do to make your questionnaire good for research. Now, if I should develop my own questionnaire, maybe I want to assess the effect of breakfast skipping consumption, breakfast skipping on obesity. If I develop a questionnaire on skipping breakfast or breakfast attitude, then after I have developed this questionnaire, I must test the questionnaire in a different population. So I should have a different group of people, administer the questionnaire to them, and then go back and analyze that data. Then based on the analysis, there are some analysis that we perform to see what we call the crunchback alpha. So this determines if that particular questionnaire actually assesses the factor of interest. So if that questionnaire does not assess the factor of interest, then we have to remodify or keep on remodifying until it assesses that variable of interest. By so doing, that means you are going to make your work very lengthy, because when you develop a questionnaire, you must first apply, or you must first test the questionnaire in a different population before you then apply that questionnaire in your own population of interest. So that means you're going to conduct multiple studies. You should have a pre-test before you conduct the main study. But now, when you use an already existing questionnaire, a questionnaire that has already been validated in a previous study, then you don't really necessarily need to test it before using it. So you can just use the questionnaire that has already got pre-tested in a different population. Now, adapting is in the sense that maybe there are some one or two variables in there that may not be applicable to your own population. You may either remove them, or you may change or rephrase them to suit your population. In this regard, you could go ahead with administering that adapted questionnaire without necessarily having to test it. But if you want to test and you think you have time, you can test it. But if you don't test or pre-test the questionnaire before using it, it's still acceptable. But in the context where you develop your own questionnaire from scratch, then you must test the questionnaire before you proceed in your main population. Okay, so I'm also seeing another one from Emmanuel Upon. Okay, I think so. He was responding to Akable. He said research questions are questions that guide you in your study or defines what the study aims to investigate or answer, whilst data collection is the process. Okay, yeah, so he was just answering the same as I responded. All right, so I hope this answers your question, Akable, before we proceed. Peter
Yes,
Akable?
please. Yes,
Okay.
please. Thank you.
All right, thank you too. And also, we also thank our colleague Emmanuel for also answering in the comment section. All right, so in the data analysis, after we have collected our data, we must analyze it to make sense. So when we just have the data doesn't make any sense until we analyze it. So, and when we are analyzing data, the quantitative analysis are different from the qualitative analysis. They don't have the same analysis. The quantitative data would involve statistical analysis to test whether there is a significant difference in two variables. Now, we use different statistical tools in performing this sort of analysis. And this include, but it's also not limited to SPSS, which is the Statistical Package for Social Sciences. This is one of the most commonly used statistical software for analyzing quantitative data. We also have data. Philippa Afi Nixon, is there a question? Your microphone is unmuted. All right, thank you. So in addition to the SPSS, which stands for the Statistical Package for Social Science, we also have another software called Startup. We have another one called R. We have others like Jamovi, Just, among others. There are several statistical software that we can use for our data analysis. Now, when we are performing the analysis, there are several analysis that we can also perform, including descriptive statistics. We also perform t-tests or ANOVA tests. We can perform chi-square tests. We can perform simple correlational analysis or regression analysis, and so on and so forth. So when we want to simply describe the data, you can go with the simple descriptive analysis. If we have two groups where we probably want to test them, then we could go for the t-test, where we want to check the means between two groups. And this is suitable for the quantitative variables. And if we have more than two quantitative variables and want to compare the mean, then we may go in for the ANOVA test. And if you want to measure the relationship between two variables and the strength, then we can go for the correlational analysis. And if you want to predict something, then you can go for the sort of regressional models. Though I wouldn't be asking you a question about them, that would be quite good. But along the way, you may be using them. But I know that most of our research work at undergraduate level is mostly descriptive in nature. And the highest that many students go is just correlational. And performing the correlation analysis is not that difficult compared to when you are trying to conduct those regression analysis. It requires some, experience or expertise in statistics from this regression analysis quite better. Now, in the qualitative aspects, we would usually try to transcribe and code the data. Now, if we perform the interview, some might want to write during the interview. So if you are having an interview with a subject or you are having a focus group discussion, some might want to write, but in most cases, we tend to record instead. So after this writing or recording, you can transcribe the information. So the transcription is about you converting the audios into a written form. And then from this point, we try to find themes that exist. So if you're talking about the finding of themes, now what we do is, as I said earlier on with the sample size, because we don't really need much subjects in the qualitative study, what we do is when you interview one person, you try to interpret what the person was saying. You try to understand their perspective. And then you go to before you go to the next subject. So when you interview the second subject, you again wait, interpret, understand what the second subject is saying. Then you now try and look, what is the similarity between, is there any similarity between the first subject and the second subject? Are they are they talking about something identical or something same? Before you go on to gather data on the third subject, the fourth, fifth, sixth, and so on and so forth. So whichever individual that you gather data from, you will try to interpret what they are saying. Now, in the context where you happen to get the same or similar feedback from the numerous subjects that you are interviewing. For example, maybe when we are asking about the reasons why, I'm trying to understand the reasons why mothers skip antenatal care. Maybe during your interview, the first subject was talking about something like economic issues, the road network to the hospital, not having health insurance. Then in the second subject, also had something like, okay, there's also economic factor, road network, and also maybe lack of trust from the health personnel. The third person is also saying something like road network, economic issue, lack of trust, and also, let's say, no health insurance. Now you can see that from the three individuals, there is something that is common, that is economics and then road network. If this sort of pattern persists, so if it persists for about 5, 6, 7 subjects, and in those subjects, we are not really getting any different perspective from the subjects. In the qualitative research, we reach what we call a saturation. So a saturation is reached when almost every single individual is telling you is giving you the same response. You are not getting any new response. So at this stage, you can decide to even stop gathering further data. And this would end up being your analysis in that qualitative aspect. So in the qualitative aspect, we call that the thematic analysis. Thematic analysis, what we try to find the theme that exists in what the people are saying. Probably in the first person, one theme is that there's an issue with the road network. And then there's also another theme as economic issue. Another has a theme of lack of trust for health personnel. So each of these are different themes that you are understanding from the perspectives of your clients. So in the context where most of your themes are what identical, you're not getting what any new theme, then you say you've reached a saturation, and that will now become what your data representation in there. Okay, so usually we're not supposed to answer to students who don't use their full names and their index number, but I'll make an exception now. Ignatius, you say you cannot hear. Is it the same with everyone? Ignatius says he cannot hear. Is it the same with everyone? Okay, no. All right, so Ignatius, please check your network. All right, thank you very much for the responses. Ignatius, iPhone, please check your network because every single one of your colleagues can hear what we are saying. And our beautiful Augustine Atarian, please turn your video feed off. Everybody knows you are beautiful or handsome. All right, so the next aspect is about the dissemination. Hey, Mommy Grace. And so do offense. You also want to show us your beauty, right? Okay, so please turn off your video feed. Grace Sapon, please turn your video feed off. So finally, research has little value if the results are not are not shared or they are kept hidden. So once we are done with our, okay, Grace doesn't, I'm sure she doesn't hear. So let me personally turn her video feed off. Okay, I've done that for Grace. So once we finish gathering our data, we need to analyze it. And when we analyze, we need to write our reports and we need to share these findings. So findings must be shared so that others can benefit from this particular finding. Because when we disseminate the findings, it ensures that the knowledge also contribute to practice and possibly leads to policy changes or interventions. So there are a number of ways that we can disseminate our findings. We can either publish our research work in journals, we can have presentation at conferences or meetings, or we can even post them on social media, on some billboards, or at our hospital, within our hospital facility, the notice board in the hospital facilities. All these are ways of disseminating our results. Now, in our context, as part of our, educational qualification towards the BSc in nursing, after we've conducted all these studies, when we are disseminating our results, we will have a presentation, which we call the thesis defense. So we will all come in person in our group and then come and tell the judges the sort of work that we have done, how we went about this work and its possible, health implication and so on and so forth. So we'll be asked questions for us to answer them to see as to whether we actually perform the study or not. And this shouldn't be anything difficult for any of us, especially when we happen to have taken part in the study. Any questions so far before we move to the next slide, the most important slide of the day? Any questions so far? Is there any questions so far before we proceed to the next slide? Sanlare Juliet, it's not a question. What is the question? Okay, Clinton, don't worry. I always share my slide. So I'll share the slide as soon as possible. Don't worry. You will get the slide by the close of today. Clinton Taffam, don't worry, you get the slide by the close of today. Okay, so Frimpong Luke is asking the publication, is there any requirement before research is accepted to be published? Okay, so when you are publishing, we have several journals and each journal has its own requirements. Sometimes the type of study or the study design that you use the content of the study and so on and so forth would contribute to that? And also, are you going to sort of, contribute significantly to that area? In a number of cases, there are some studies when you are published in the journals, if the study is not really contributing much, some of the renowned journals don't really want to publish your articles unless the less renowned ones. But if it's about the social media, you can just publish them there. But as a scientist, we always recommend or we prefer that your publications or your work are found in reputable journals that have undergone peer review. Here, individuals who are experts in that particular area read your work, and where there is supposed to be any sort of, comment for improvement, they make those comments and they help you to craft a much better research work before you would publish them. But we also have what we call predatory journals. The predatory journals, they don't really care about the quality of your work. What they want is money from you. So they take the money and then they publish your work, irrespective of how quality the work is. So of course, when you take the standard and high quality journals, of course, they do have their own criteria. Even the low quality journals also have criteria, just that their criteria is not as high compared to the high quality impact factor journals. So whichever journal that you're going to publish in, if it's a peer-reviewed journal, they all have their criteria or certain requirements that you must follow before you can publish with them. Okay, so Finora Nyamedo is asking, on which of the media can you publish your research work? So any media at all, you can publish your research work. I have come across several publications on X, which we used to call Twitter. I've come across publications on Facebook as well. I've come across publications on Instagram, LinkedIn. Now, some of these channels tend to give you a better, audience than others. When you take something like X, you can share a link to your work on X so that anybody can click on the link and then go to where the journal has actually published the work to read it in detail. Same applies to when you post the work on, let's say, Instagram or LinkedIn. LinkedIn is actually a professional channel. Here it's mostly about professional activity, business, academics, and so on and so forth. So when you share your work there, people will get to see your work even quite faster, and then they can read and also comment or even cite the work that you perform. Now, even on our own WhatsApp status, we can also share our work there, either an abstract of the work or even a link to the work, so that our contact can see and then click on the link and then go to the journal to view what we have worked on. Okay, so I don't know what Adai Foster is asking about. Are you new here? His comment towards oh, okay, so Finora, are you talking with respect to the lecture notes or which one? If it's the lecture notes, I will give it to the rep, and also I also upload it on the V class as well, so don't worry. So be patient, as Genevieve is saying. Okay, so now Oluwaseitan is asking, please, can the video be uploaded on YouTube? Yes, I think, yeah, the videos are always uploaded on YouTube. The IT office, they work on the video and they upload them on YouTube. So please check the YouTube channel. You'll find the videos there. And then Frimpon look again asking, I came over journal ResearchGate. ResearchGate is not a journal. It's not a journal, it's a database. So we're talking about literature review along the line. So don't worry, we'll learn about ResearchGate. ResearchGate is not a journal. So in ResearchGate, you don't pay anything to publish work in there. What we do is you publish in journals, And as a database tends to have some of these publications in there. So you can just post your research work in some of these databases like the ResearchGate. You don't have to pay anything. Nobody will ask you to pay something to publish or to have your work in ResearchGate in particular. Again, ResearchGate is not a journal. They don't publish articles. They only have the articles in there. It's just like you going to a school's library. A school's library does not publish books or articles. But when you go to your school's library, you find books that have already been published hanging on the shelves. So the ResearchGate serves like something like what? A library, where you can find published work in there. ResearchGate itself does not publish any article. I hope that is clear from one look. All right, you're welcome. All right, so is there any other question before we move to the next slide? Is there any other question before we move to the next slide? All right, so in the next slide, we are going to have an exercise as usual. And our beautiful Rebecca Akpa wants us to see her beauty. But please, Madam Rebecca, turn your video feed off. Thank you. Whenever you log into the session, we know that every single individual here is beautiful and handsome. So please, let's turn our video feed off and also mute ourselves until when we want to answer or, contribute to the session. Okay, so in the next slide, we are going to have an exercise. So in this exercise, we are going to have a hypothetical issue. And based on that hypothetical issue, we are going to develop, or we are going to go through the 10 stages of the research process. And here I have listed all the 10 stages to make it much more easier and what is expected of each one of us to do. Research team investigating a current public health or nutrition or nursing related issue within a community. So we can give ourselves any example that we want. And for my example, maybe it could be low exclusive breastfeeding rates, or it could be a rising hypertension among adults, or poor dietary diversity among adolescents, or inadequate hand washing practices in the community. Now, I don't want to give you an example for you. If I give the specific example, it's likely that we're all going to get the same responses from each one of you. So here, you will choose your own example. And in the first instance, when you are called to answer, you give the example that you have chosen. Before, based on that example, we will go through the 10 stages or steps of the research process. So for example, if I decided I'm going to go in with, let's say, rising hypertension among adults. So that would be my example. So here I will talk about the problem of the statement of problem. Why is the rising hypertension among adults a major issue? Which population am I going to study? What is the magnitude of this particular effect? What is the, significance of the study? If I don't conduct the study, what will happen? So that will be my problem statement. Then I'll proceed with my research question. So if I have a question based on that problem, my question will be what is the prevalence of hypertension, or what is the rate of hypertension, and so on and so forth. Then I'll state my question and I'll go on to literature review all the way to how I'm going to describe my finding. So this will be our exercise, and we have 10 minutes to do the exercise and then present our findings right now. So please go ahead with this exercise. And in the next few minutes, I'm going to unmute and then I'll start calling randomly for your answers. And please do not use AI for that, because this will help me to, know where we need to put in more effort in probably clarifying and so on and so forth. Please do not use AI in answering the question. Yes, Julius, please go ahead.
Sir, please, my network went off. I didn't get the question.
Okay, so the question is, you are going to assume that you are part of a team and you are working in a community where you've probably identified a certain problem. So the problem that you've identified in the community, you are going to use that hypothetical problem to go through all the 10 stages of the research process. And an example is, maybe I find out that in Garden City, among the Kumasi center, many of these students are probably developing hypertension, or I'm perceiving that there's a high rate of hypertension among these students. That is what my hypothetical problem. So based on this, you will go through the stages, and then you state your problem of statement. You develop or state your research questions all the way to how you are going to disseminate your findings. Is it clear? Is it clear now, Juliet, Rebecca, Moses? Is it now clear? Okay. So let me see if I can type. If I type it here, probably it might be, we may have smaller. Okay, let me still type it and see. So I just want to type the question quickly so that I will just get back. Okay. So I'm trying to type just that we may have. So let me give you more examples if maybe you would want to use the examples. Just a minute, I'm still typing the question. All right, so I believe you can now see. So here, let me use the pointer. So here where the pointer is, this is the question. So you are part of a research team investigating current public health or nutrition related issue in your community. And here I've given examples that I've highlighted. So I've written the question or the scenario in red, and then some examples in black, and I've highlighted them in yellow. So now you can decide to select any of these examples. So based on any of the examples that you select, so if you select low exclusive breastfeeding rates, that is what your hypothetical topic. So based on this particular topic that you selected, now we will need you to go through all the 10 stages of the research process by what? Stating your problem statement, developing research questions, all the way to how you will disseminate your findings. That is the question. Is it clear now? Is it clear now? Okay, all right. Thank you, Salari. Gertrude, still it's not clear. So Gertrude, can you please use the microphone and tell me why it's not clear? So Comfort, say please. Yes, yes, Comfort Oduro, right? Yes, Comfort Oduro. You can choose any of the 4. Just choose only one, not all 4. Okay, Regina, we are going to do that now. You do it and I'll call you to, mention or tell us what you have done. So Regina, I'll start by calling you, so get ready. Yes, Regina Sasu, please go ahead. Your hand is up.
Sir, please, I chose a topic and I started mine before you posted the
Okay,
examples
so
only.
yes, so the thing is, I initially told you that you can take your own topic. So if you have chosen your own topic, that's even much better.
Okay,
So
all right,
yes, if you've chosen your own topic, you can proceed with your own topic, no problem.
all right. Thank you.
Yeah, so Roxanne, Jennifer, yes, you can take your own topic. So initially I said you should take your own topic, but to make it much clearer, and many were, asking for that. That's why I kept examples here. So if you have your own topic, that is even much better. Because when you are going to do your own research, you will choose your own topic. I wouldn't, choose topic for you. Unless maybe the topic that you are choosing is not feasible, then your supervisors will help you to get better topics. All right, so our time starts now, and we have the next 10 minutes. By 11 o'clock, I'll just start calling so that we all quickly give our perspectives about the assignments.
Walaikum assalam.
Salu, Munawara, please mute yourself. The reps, can you please show your hand, show by hand? The center reps. Okay, we have Asiat Mohammed, Caleb, Rebecca. Okay. Okay. Now, do you have groups already? Sorry. You can please unmute and speak. Do you have groups available?
Which kind of group? Presentation group or
Yes, presentation groups.
no, no, we
You
don't
don't
have
have
right now.
one.
Yeah, but we have all the names together, but it's not shared yet.
Okay, so because of time factor, and I want you to do a much better way. So I want
Okay.
you to be in groups. Now I'm seeing almost 460 participants. So what I will do is you are going to put yourselves in groups of 10. You discuss this and then present your findings in Word file. When you do that, please submit your work to your center rep. And then the center reps will then collate all of them in one zip folder and then send them to me by email. I think I already made an assignment than at the class essay because of the time factor. That way I can be able to, go through every single one of them and then we can further discuss it in the classroom. Hey, Regina, but Madam Regina, we'll listen to yours before we go away. But you still be part of a group. So the centers, please create groups for your people. There should be a maximum of 10 in each group. And then the group will decide on the topic that they want to work on. They can either use the one that I've given or they can choose their own topic. And then based on the topic that they've chosen, they will just go through the 10 stages and then everything will be written down in Word file. I don't want PowerPoint or PDF, no. Everything should be in Word file and then everything should be submitted to the center reps for which they will, file them together in a zip folder and then send them to me. I hope that is clear. All right, so Madam Regina, if you're ready, you can tell us yours. If not, you just join your group and then we'll work it out. All right, so somebody called me. Yes, madam.
Yeah, this is Regina.
Okay.
Sir, I wasn't
Okay,
able to complete everything.
okay, so you don't worry, because I know with the time factor, it will take us quite some time before we can finish the process. So
Yes.
let's use that as our assignment. So
Thank you.
Christopher is asking if I can do the grouping. Okay, so you see we have center reps who tend to represent us at the center level. So please let Anna and respect the center reps do that. Okay, Christopher Amwa, you are already a
Sir,
rep, so please do that for us.
sir,
Yes, sir.
yeah, I know the reason why I'm saying you should do the grouping for us. So I think this thing is going to be
Chris,
something else. The group.
Chris, we've all been students before, okay? And as a student, we've all been in leadership positions before. And some of these things will happen. You get it? Yours is what? To just do the grouping, whatever that happens, the backlash or whatever shouldn't be much of an issue. And I'm sure no one will, call you at the background to insult you for just grouping them. No. So, then I'm giving you the mandate. Okay. Now, what you are going to do is you have the list of students and the index numbers are in a chronological order. So what I'm suggesting is maybe when you take the index numbers, those who are ranging from, let's say, 031313925. So that means we have 392 all the way to, let's say, 302. That would be 10 people. So all of them will be in one group. And then 303 all the way to 313. Those will be in one group. Yes, Rebecca. Rebecca doesn't like it that way.
Yeah.
Yes, please go ahead.
Please, can you do it for us, like you putting us in group right now, so that like group 1 to 10 by in the waiting room so that we just capture it fast, then we come
You
back
see,
just finish the
as
class.
we are speaking, I don't really, I don't have the full list. And that's what I'm saying.
Sir,
And the centers to I only have access. Hey, Krista, Callistus Nyabesi.
sir,
Mr. Callistus, what are you
hello.
drinking like that? Are we safe?
Hello, sir.
Yes, Madam Rebecca.
Please, I want to ask if we should
We
rather
are
give
safe. I'm energizing
based
myself.
on
Okay.
center base, because if you share us among like other centers, we don't know how it will be like. So I want to ask if it should be done on center base.
Yes, so that was what I was trying to avoid. Because if I should share you, I don't know the index number that is linked to which center. So I'd rather do it based on the index numbers, which wouldn't be much helpful. So it's best we do the center base. That's why I said the center reps should do the grouping. So that center reps, you have access to all your, center members. So based on that, you should try to do the grouping. So the mandate now falls entirely on the center reps to the grouping based on the center. Yes.
So then we are 8 or not 10. So we are 8, not 10. So it will be 8 or
Come again?
8. Like we are 8 centers.
You are 8 centers.
8. Yeah.
Yeah. So each center should do it by the reps.
Okay. So it won't be 10, so it will be 8.
Okay. But the groups will not be 8. We have more than 8 groups.
Okay. The
Because
groups I was talking about. If you did it by
the
centers, it will be.
students here are there were over 450 initially, though now some are dropping. But when
the
I'm getting the
Kumasi
zip
alone is
file,
300 plus. That's why.
come again.
Kumasi has the highest population. They are about 300 plus. So
That is okay. So I'll
Kumasi
be
only.
expecting to get 8 zip files. And when we are sending the zip file, please use your center as the name. Let's say Kete Center or Kumasi Center. And then within each of those center files, I'll get the individual work. And please make sure you add your group index numbers at the top before the work comes below it. All right, Rebecca, is your hand still up? Rebecca, is your hand still up? All right. Thank you very much, and see you next week. Next week we'll be looking at literature review. All right. Goodbye, and enjoy the rest of. So Winifred, yes, please go ahead. Your hand is up.
Sir, please, can we do one example for us to know what you would be expecting? Like maybe the question 1. Can we do it, or can someone present it to you for us to know we are on the right track?
Okay. So is your own ready?
No, please.
You said, can somebody present? That's why I'm asking if yours is ready.
No, please.
Oh, why is yours not ready?
Yeah, let me read this one, then you do it for us.
Okay.
Who was speaking again?
Tell me, like I said, let me read this topic, then you do it for us to see something. Or
Is it Callistus?
no, it's Caleb.
No, there are several hands, and I currently don't know who is speaking. Okay, Emmanuel Atayo, please go ahead. Okay, Caleb was one speaking. Okay, yes, Caleb, go ahead then.
Yeah, I said like I was reading one question with like I said like what impact does social media usage have on mental health of teenagers in Ghana? So like you use that question to do it for us to see maybe.
That is your topic, right?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Okay, then please go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't do. I was just.
Hello, sir.
I was reading it so that.
Yes, you said you were going to read it so that we use it as the example.
No,
Yeah.
as
the first.
Okay, so what he's trying to say is that he is giving you a topic, and then you work on it for us to know how to go about the whole situation. So he's rather giving you a topic now, and you should work on it.
So that
Yes.
looks very much like his own group's work or topic. All right. So what I will do is I will use the topic that we are already having I mean, some of the examples that we have here, either the low exclusive breastfeeding rates, the rising hypertension, and so on, any of them, I'll use that one of them for the example. But before I do that, let me quickly know why we still have some hands up. Yes, Imanolata, your hand is up.
Hello, sir. Good morning.
Yes, please go ahead.
Please, about grouping.
About
let's
what?
say about the grouping of the students.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say Takrady we are 80, so we are going to group them 10, 10, 10. So in all, we are going to get 80 groups for Takrady Center, or
Yes.
okay.
All right. Yes, Conchi Beatrice.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
Please,
Please go ahead.
he said we should do it in groups. Later, he said in the groups, we should have the individual files where we've all done it. So I didn't get it. So is it still in groups or individually?
Okay, so what I'm saying is when we are working in groups, I want that at the beginning of your, Microsoft Word file, all the individuals in the group, their index numbers should show before the work that you have done comes down. Is it clear?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Alexandra Boachi, please go ahead.
Hello, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Please, sir, I wanted to find out when are we submitting the assignment?
You will submit it latest by next week, Thursday, so that I can see what we have done before Saturday's session, so that it will guide how we go about with the Saturday session. That's the main idea behind the research, this particular exercise.
Okay, sir, thank you.
Thank you too. Yes, Callistus.
Mine is a contribution.
Okay.
Please, with the number at hand here over 460, that means you are expecting a grouping of not less than 46.
Yes.
Sir, with the number of groups, there is a possibility that research topics may coincide. Maybe we have 2 or more groups settle on one research topic. In such a situation, what happens? Is it okay?
So that is not an issue. So the main idea behind this exercise is not about you selecting your research topic now. It's about me getting to know how well you've captured the concept so far, which should also guide me on how to go about with the subsequent sessions. That's the main idea behind the exercise.
Okay. And will it be scored? Would you assign marks?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you too. Yes, Marie-Laure.
Okay, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Please, about the questions you posted, I chose the poor dietary diversity among adolescents. So, like something small I drafted, I wanted you to know whether it's maybe I'm on the right path, so that you help us clarify how
the reason why I was trying to get the hands up quickly before I look into the clarification part of the time. Because now we've been asked not to exceed our time. That's why I wanted to know what issues we have at the moment before we look at that aspect. So let's first listen to those who have their hands up. But don't put your hand down for now.
Okay.
So let's take, okay. But you can mute yourself from there. Yes, Winfred Abraham, please go ahead.
So me too, I'd also wanted to give my own example. I've also done it, so I'd wanted to read it to you if it's
okay. Yes, hold on. Osenyami.
So I wanted to ask if hello, please, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to find out if let's say you state a problem, you state a problem, then let's say the research question. Are you giving a general question or you give the sub questions
So the question that you state should be related directly to your topic. If you remember in the second section, we were talking about the question. We said that in many cases, when you have a topic, your research question that you state, if it's the main question or the main goal, comes directly from the question, the topic that you stated. The objectives are rather what the sub questions that you state based on the steps or the step that you want to take in achieving the overall goal.
I can't hear. It's like someone is distracting.
Somebody's. I personally cannot see the person who is talking from here.
Clinton or say. Oh.
No, it's not Mark Donko, but I can't see who is speaking.
Say.
Okay. Now, so what we are saying is when you establish the question, you can have 1, 2, or even more questions. These questions tend to come directly from the research topic.
Okay. So meaning it should come from the problem you have stated.
These are what we can convert, or that's made to the objectives or the hypothesis of the study. Now, if our main objective or if our goal is what we are looking at for, then the entire topic usually tends to become what the main objective of the study or the goal of the study. Then the specific objectives are the sort of steps that we take in reaching the main objective or the main goal of the study. And those same objectives that we've stated, they can be converted to what research question. We make use of them as hypotheses only when we want to create, when we want to compare the effect of 2 variables. So that topic that you said, assume that we use a topic of, let's say, low exclusive breastfeeding rate as our topic. We want to assess the prevalence of exclusive breastfeeding rates in Kumasi. Now, our topic would be that, our question would be that what is the prevalence of breastfeeding, low exclusive breastfeeding rate in Kumasi? Now, to do so, this is a question and can be what the main objective. The main objective now would now be 10 as to determine the rate of exclusive breastfeeding in Kumasi. Now, if it is a more descriptive study, then we could have several objectives that are coming under it and start to give several questions. So now maybe we could ask what or how many mothers probably have given birth, because if you want to know those who have breastfeeding, you should have those who have given birth. So you might want to know the prevalence or the number of mothers who have given birth. Then among them, you might probably want to know how many of them probably are breastfeeding. And based on those who are breastfeeding, or among all those who have given birth, how many are exclusively breastfeeding? These are what questions that you can ask based on the question of or the topic of determining the prevalence of low exclusive breastfeeding rates in the Kumasi. So whichever way that you look at it, they should come directly from the topic that you have stated for yourself. Is it okay?
Sir, but I wanted to, let's say, let me give an example. Let's say research problem, like the one you have identified here. Let's say I have a problem here, inadequate access to clean water and sanitation facilities, leading to high rate of waterborne disease among a certain group of people, let's say a suburb in an area. So in that case, the problem statement is, let's say the problem statement is going to be, let's say, residents of this particular group of people face increased risk of waterborne disease due to inadequate access to clean water. Let's say that is the problem statement.
Okay, so when
Please, am I on the right path?
I'm coming. When you take what you just said, you have identified a problem, but when we are writing the problem statement, as I was explained earlier on, you go much into detail about information. You write something about half a page a length or about a paragraph or two. So when you are writing the problem statement, you first start with a broad issue. What is the issue? Generally. So you briefly describe the general situation using evidence. Then the second is you now have to try and narrow it to what your you specify the exact gap or the inconsistency that exists in that problem. Again, you said what was your problem earlier on?
The research problem: inadequate access to clean water and sanitation facilities.
Okay, so this can be what maybe so the general the first line could be what inadequate access to clean water is a major public health issue worldwide, especially in developing countries. So this was a general problem. So when we are talking about the problem statement, though you have identified the problem with respect to what inadequate access to clean water, but you start by giving what a broader perspective of this before you specifically go to your context. So in your area, probably despite the government intervention to bring about either boreholes or let's say pipe-borne water in certain areas or in where you find yourself, this issue of inadequate access still persists or is still in high it's still a high issue in your area. So you've now moved from the national or the global context down to your specific area. And then from there, you tend to highlight the gap that exists in knowledge. Probably in your area, no study has been conducted to determine access to quality or access to safe water or sanitation. You get it? And then if you don't conduct your study, what will happen? That's a consequence of not addressing that issue. So probably the consequence is that if this is not addressed, it can lead to what the spread of cholera and other sort of infections within the state. Then finally, you talk about the purpose or the reason why you are conducting your study. So
they
that is how we
all come under the problem statement.
Yes. So you need to tell the audience what is the entire problem. So in the global, in the national perspective, what is the issue? And then you narrow it down to your own local context. And then from your local context, now what is the gap now that has not been filled? And then after the justification, what if you don't conduct a study or if not conduct a study, if that problem is not addressed, what will happen? And then finally, what is the purpose of the thing that you're about conducting? So the problem statements, in some cases, you can just have maybe like 6, 7, 8 to 15 lines. You don't really have to go up to a page length for the problem statement. About half a page or just some few lines is okay. But you stating it as just one line wouldn't really capture the general context of the issue. It wouldn't be able, even if it captures the general context, it would not be able to capture the general context, the specific area where you want to conduct your study, the justification as to if you don't conduct the study, what will happen, and then what is the purpose or the reason behind you conducting a study. You will not be able to capture that in just one sentence. Because that's why we use a paragraph. And the paragraph, it could be about 5, 6, 7, 8, or 10 or 15 lines, depending on how you reframe your sentence. Is that okay?
Okay, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But
Yes,
the research questions, you see the second point, develop research question.
Okay.
So that one, you formulate one main research question and like where appropriate, like that one. Let's say I have a question linking to my problem. Let's say, what are the factors contributing to inadequate access to clean water and sanitation facilities? Abi, that one is okay. Or That one too, you have to expand it like the way you do this one.
No, that is okay. You can ask that simple or one question or more. It depends on the research objectives. So if you have more objectives in reaching the goal, then you could have more questions. But if you don't have many objectives, then one question is okay. One or few questions are okay.
And so I was asking where you state the main objective and then the specific objective. Would they come under the research questions here?
Yes. Come again.
Yeah, I was also asking where you state your main objective and then the specific objectives.
Yes.
Would they also fall under the research questions?
Okay, so when we are conducting research itself, we do have main objectives or goal of the study and the specific objectives. And these are what we also convert to research questions or hypotheses. So but in this context, I will only take the research questions from you.
Okay.
Because I'm only taking the research questions, but when we are developing a full proposal, there are different subsections. The research objectives are different subsection to the research question. But the research